So Doom Patrol is back with its third episode of more badassery, more entertaining stuff, and a very Larry, aka Negative Man, centered episode. So let's break this down. How's it going, guys? Welcome to a brand new Doom Patrol breakdown. This is for episode 3, and yet again, another good episode. I think this episode was very enjoyable. Nothing wrong with it, but I don't feel like it was as, like, you know, in your face, blowing up amazing as the first 2 episodes were. But I do want to stress the fact that that doesn't mean that this wasn't a good episode. As I said, it was very Negative Man centered, and it had a lot of important character moments for him, but also, nevertheless, some interesting developments for other characters as well. So, of course, before we get into this, guys, be sure to subscribe with notifications on to make sure you never miss out on a single Doom Patrol review or breakdown or just news update in the Titans verse. I guess you call it Titans verse. And other than that, crush that thumbs up button to make sure YouTube knows that you enjoy seeing videos just like this. So if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Nobody narrated like at least a recap of the first 2 episodes, but he didn't in this episode, and maybe that's because he wasn't actually in it. So maybe he's just going to narrate things, or at least a recap of the previous episodes with like whatever episodes he is in, because they really do emphasize the fact that he breaks that 4th wall. But anyway, the beginning of the episode saw Crazy Jane putting up posters of, you know, the chief is lost, because, you know, as like it seems to be the main drive of the season, apart from Mr. Nobody and stopping him, is that he has the chief. I am intrigued if we'll get him, you know, quite a few episodes before the end of the season and they're all kind of working together to stop him. But regardless, we had that mob of people going after Crazy Jane, you know, because they identify her as one of the people who have destroyed the town, or at least partly responsible for it. And I have to admit, I expected her retaliation to be a lot more than just stapling, sorry, that posted to some guy's head. I thought one of her personalities would snap, but that doesn't mean to say that Crazy Jane wasn't amazing in this episode, because I can't wait to talk about that fight scene towards the end. But as usual, with the Doom Patrol being, like, you know, kind of about this dysfunctional family of superheroes put together, even though it was very Negative Man focused this episode with his flashbacks, we do explore, you know, the feelings of other characters throughout those episodes, even when they're focused heavily on other characters. So, for example, we had Cyborg flashbacks to his mother, and that explosion that happened, and he was even like saying, is any of this stuff fabricated? I feel like this is definitely a seed to him finding out a larger truth, perhaps to do with, you know, his father. And, you know, they keep emphasizing how, and we know anyway what Silas Stone is like. He just wants the best for Cyborg and his son, but way too much so. Like, he's like privacy mode enabled, doesn't matter, that's not really privacy mode, he can still hear everything he's saying by the sounds of it during this episode. Just all that kind of stuff, I really appreciated that, and I can't wait to explore more of Cyborg's journey here. And as we've even found out through the past couple of episodes, Silas keeps trying to push Cyborg, obviously for the Justice League, as that got teased, and this episode he wanted the private jet to get to Paraguay, because that's where they found out they needed to go to learn a lot more about Mr. Nobody, as, you know, there was that donkey photo. And then this just takes me back to the intro of episode 1, where we found and saw even Mr. Nobody's creation. But anyway, like, he got cut off by Silas and no private jet, and that's when they had to make their own way to Paraguay this episode, which was hilarious within itself. I really enjoyed that montage. What more can I say than Doom Patrol is really keeping up that really amazing chemistry between these brilliant and unique characters through just those funny moments that was happening when the bus was just jumping across the map in a very kind of Indiana Jones-esque kind of way, if you know what I mean though. But during that bus journey, when everyone was asleep, this is when Larry was trying to appeal to the negative energy within himself about what happened earlier on in the episode. Anyway, this like destroyed the bus, and we'll get to that in a second, but this brings me back to earlier on in the episode. At the end of last episode, he left that note saying we need to set some ground rules, and essentially this, you know, engaged some of the flashbacks that we saw to Larry's boyfriend, John. Now, we have to remember that Larry has a wife, Cheryl, if I remember correctly, but obviously he's hiding his sexuality, especially in the time setting where he was a freaking test pilot. This was just creating some drama in terms of how John wanted to stop the whole test piloting thing. I don't know if he's strictly a test pilot, but Larry is, and he doesn't obviously want him to be, because as we all know, back in those days, being a test pilot wasn't exactly the most you know, long job, life-fulfilling job to hold down. But I really enjoyed these flashbacks. I feel like they did a really good job at, you know, and this is what I'm really enjoying about Doom Patrol anyway. They're really exploring and making you feel for the characters. I feel like not a single character is getting left out, so I'm expecting more moments like this for each character throughout the season. It just so happens that this was kind of Larry's exploration, but it was really important anyway for him this episode to kind of get a bit more connected to that negative energy of his, especially by the time they get to Paraguay, but we'll get to that. But essentially, you know, we see the struggle of his wife, you know, kind of just not feeling loved, very obviously, but always waiting on him, worrying about him dying, just kind of like John is. Now, Jane gave some pretty sound advice, which I feel like is going to come to fruition even more throughout the episodes, and how, you know, if you don't treat the negative energy badly, then maybe he won't treat you so badly. Later on, we even got those more explored moments from after the crash. So we have seen some obviously negative energy origin stuff before, when he came out of the plane absolutely burnt to a crisp. But now, you know, we saw him in a hospital where he's giving off so much radiation, it was killing all the doctors and nurses and everyone around him. And when Cheryl left him, I felt like kind of sorry for him, but I really like how they picked this up towards the end of the episode, and I'll leave this from now till then for when, you know, the negative energy and Larry were actually having a conversation, because it's not necessarily all of the negative energy's fault for him ruining his life. I like how they kind of offered that different spin on it a little bit later. But going back to Cyborg for a minute, I mean, obviously we all know where Cyborg ends up. Like, at this point in his life, he's not in the Justice League, but we know that's gonna happen. But, you know, he's been very, like, orientated to, you know, think like the mission, like how Batman kind of would, in sense of, like, here's the briefing, here's blah blah blah, we need to go to Paraguay. But I really found it quite funny, but also sad at the same time. They offered kind of two parallels here with how Robot Man was taking the piss out of Cyborg throughout the episode, and just saying things like, impressive leadership skills there, Batman, way to lead the team, Justice League 2020, and just other comments like, you know, I bet Aquaman doesn't lose his keys. Just constantly, like, Cyborg must really feel like he's always trying to reach that mark, you know, not only from his dad, but how everyone, he's got a little bit of fame back in Detroit. We saw that other person come up to him, you know, constant, as I said, Justice League meeting the mark stuff throughout the episode, saying like, what is Batman like? But he hasn't met him. So I did appreciate those little Easter eggs. There wasn't like stuff as much as like last episode where you saw on the screen where it's like, oh, Superboy, or like it didn't say Superboy, but man naked with dog running up the highway or something like that. I assume you've watched Titans, and, you know, we've had some Justice League stuff happen in that as well, and Dick Grayson flashbacks with how, you know, Wonder Woman is downstairs with Batman in the Justice League or whatever. So, you know, in this world, it's very much so established that the Flash is out there, Wonder Woman, all that stuff is going on, and Batman is, you know, the head of the Justice League, and Cyborg's just a little bit late to the party in this universe, in the sense that it will happen in a few years, but just not right now. And I really like this setup and this timeline of how this universe is handling the Justice League, certain character ages and stuff like that, a lot more than what the CW has. I know this is like a weird comparison to make, and I understand the restrictions and the timeline and way things have unfolded in the CW, but, you know, for example, Supergirl was on CBS and blah blah blah, they had to create multiple Earths. Technically Supergirl isn't on Earth 1, neither is Superman. Do you know what I mean? But in this Earth, it's done the way it should be done. But anyway, screw the bus. Crazy Jane teleports Robot Man, Negative Man to Paraguay. You know, and it wasn't Crazy Jane, it was Flint. I mean, you know, all her personality. Now, this was all about Fuktopia. I really hope that doesn't demonetize me. I mean, for obvious reasons. I really like this part of the episode because it explored, you know, the character, that scientist. I'm not going to say the obvious words, and I probably won't be showing those screenshots for obvious reasons because of that scientist's origins. But this is a place where you can still get upgrades, just like what we saw Morden do in episode 1, way back in was it in the 40s? I think it was, when he became Mr. Nobody. You can literally upgrade yourself to become a metahuman, and, you know, Mr. Nobody is his most infamous client that he seems to, like, pride himself on. And I knew it. Chief, if you go back to my episode 1 reviews, I'm not like, oh, look what I called or anything like that, but we got the inkling, or I got the inkling at least, that Chief was somehow involved with this guy. And that is true. So when they were telling the play of how Mr. Nobody was created, I assume moments after what we saw in episode 1, Chief came along like what we saw in the play, shot the scientist, tried to, like, shoot up, like, the chamber maybe that contributed to Mr. Nobody's creation or something. And the scientist Von Fuch, and yet again demonetization, noted that he stole some of his, like, most prized possession or something like that. Now, my theory is, I could be wrong, I'm not, I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, but if you remember back in Titans, season 1, where they were trying to fix Raven and Beast Boy rebelled against that, like, Chief has this, like, substance or liquid, if I remember correctly. Essentially, like, I think he has stolen the stuff from that scientist that Chief has made multiple members of the Doom Patrol out of. Remember what he injected Beast Boy with? Just stuff like that. Maybe he dabbled with it himself. He's very, very smart, as the scientist puts it himself. Not as smart as him necessarily, but he stole his sacred metahuman juice kind of thing. And you get what I'm going with. If you've watched Titans episode 4, I believe, Doom Patrol, you know exactly what I'm on about, and I think that's what the Chief stole. But anyway, as I said, really praising this moment of the episode. The scientist is still alive, literally with tubes being hooked up to him. Typical in the sense that he seems like the kind of guy who wants to live forever and would do anything through any means of science to achieve that. He even tempts Jane. I really like this moment to take away all the other personalities. But Jane doesn't want that. She feels like every single other one has a right to live and not be extracted and, used for God knows what. And, it made me love Jane even more because of that. But Jane also dives into the fact that it was a load of scientists, F-wits, just like that guy, who experimented on her as a little girl that created her the way she is. And I'm looking forward to hopefully getting more kind of, as we have a Larry focused episode like this, origin stuff with her like that. And I know we've already had the tapes with Chief, but I assume that's gotta come. But as we know, everyone is like struggling with their own stuff. Like Robot Man doesn't like who he's being. Jane seems to be ironically the most accepting of her situation, but Larry hates what he's become the most, I think. I mean, maybe you could also like level that out with Elastigirl, but either way, this isn't about her strictly. So he walks into the chamber and he wants to separate himself from the negative energy. And this is what I was referring to earlier, carrying on that conversation. It made me laugh how the negative energy was like trolling around, like mimicking his own words, saying F you and stuff like this. But it all kind of came to a close when he was just like saying, oh, you ruined my life, you did this. And whilst I do kind of agree with that, the negative energy was saying, look, it's not all entirely my fault. The negative energy was kind of trying to explain across, I think, back to referencing earlier with the flashbacks and how, John wanted to leave, but he didn't. And like, so he went on that test and that's why the negative energy went in him. Of course, he's to blame for that. But at the end of the day, he's not 100% to blame, I guess, is what the negative energy was trying to say to him. But regardless, I think they can only move onwards and upwards from here. Robot Man ripped off the freaking, chamber door, and they were still very much so fused together. Now, I loved the fighting scenes kind of going alongside the same time as this with the scientist, or Von Fuch, whatever you want to call him, and how he had control of every single body just under one personality. My god, they did not hold back on the violence. Personally, I dig this. Robot Man's was definitely the most gory because he's freaking strong as a freaking robot. He was literally crushing people's heads and skulls. And Crazy Jane, oh my god, what can I say? Every single episode makes me fall in love with her character even more. Literally, how she was, coming out with different words. We saw that in the last episode. I can't remember the exact personality name, but I love how at the end of it, she was like, Avida saying mother effer, and then just killed the scientist with that concluding insult. It was just perfect, and this is what I love Doom Patrol for. I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I know some people think it's unnecessary, the lengths they go to with this kind of stuff, but man, I'm all about this. Final moments of the episode, we got even more like moments from Larry's flashbacks, more sad moments where, I think Larry didn't essentially want John to have anything to do with him or see him like this, so he tells him to go. Here's John in the fields because he was going to stay there and take over his position as test pilot. I'm hoping we actually get to see more of that story, but maybe this is all we will get, because I assume Larry just gets picked up by the Chief, but maybe they are really going to go much more in depth, even further along with the characters than what I think, but we're gonna have to wait and see there. Other than that, we did have other moments, as I mentioned, with other developments for the characters in the episode, with Cliff finding his daughter's number when looking through the Chief's stuff. He was kind of twiddling his thumbs about calling her throughout the episode, but he actually eventually screws it up and throws it away. I don't think that's the last we're gonna see of that. And lastly, guys, that ending. We all know that guy at the bus stop was trying to get his own meta abilities from the Von Fuch place, and Jesus Christ, this is what I mean by Doom Patrol. I feel like if you show this scene to somebody, that sums up Doom Patrol. He walks out of the chamber. He was like, oh, I shouldn't have been in here so long. And there's a freaking like raptor, dinosaur coming out of his freaking neck. It looked like he had like a plant of broccoli or something coming out of his hand. But guys, there's my review for this episode. As I said kind of towards the beginning, not like as amazing in your face as the first two, but still a solid 2 thumbs up from me. Thoroughly enjoyed this episode. And I'm just looking forward to it more and more each week. I love what they're exploring. I love what they're doing. And it truly is the best DC TV show right now. I can wholeheartedly say that. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this episode down in the comments below. Subscribe, especially if you got this far and you're brand new. Hit that thumbs up button, as it really does help these videos out. It seriously does, and helps it get out there a bit more, so I really appreciate that. Links to other things are in the description down below. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.